So this is Dr. Belcher. I am in the East Coast, New Bern, North Carolina, and I'm here with Dr. Shine. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Dr. Jahaz Shine. I'm on the West Coast, kind of, sort of, in Scottsdale, Arizona. So thanks for having me.
Oh, good, good. So we both graduated from Bastyr University, San Diego, and that's how we met. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about me. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I am licensed out of California, and I moved to New Bern, North Carolina because my husband is in the military. He's a Marine, and we got stationed over in New Bern, North Carolina. I have a practice here, and it's been great. It's only been open for a few months in North Carolina. I also work in cancer research, so I do a lot of traveling. How about you, Jahaz? Why don't you give us some background about you?
Well, I recently moved out here. Maybe it's been about a year now. Moved from California. I'm licensed in both California and Arizona, and I have been taking patients over the last few years through telemedicine in other states. So it's been a whirlwind of practicing. Now my specialty is kind of boiled down to thyroid and bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. Um, but yeah, my excuse me, within my time of practicing medicine, I've only been a naturopathic doctor since 2016, actually. So it hasn't been that long, but I've been in the field of medicine for a number of years, about 20 years now, actually. I was in the Air Force for 10 years. I did space and missile medicine when I first started out in a flight clinic at Vandenberg Air Force Base. And then I moved on to Scott where I did air evacuation. So after doing air evac in about 8 to 9 countries, I kind of came back to US, got settled, and eventually became a reservist,
Okay.
gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, my Nadia, who my whole world kind of revolves around now besides practicing. And yeah, now I'm settled here in Scottsdale and seeing patients in both cities, well, both states here in Arizona and California.
Okay, that's great. Well, just to get down to why we're doing what we're doing right now, it's because we want to get the awareness out there to community, especially people of color, because there is a disparity between healthcare and natural healthcare is relatively, it can be inexpensive. It can start as a foundation, and we just want to get that information out there. Do you have anything to add, Jahaz?
Well, yeah, I remember I put a video up about COVID-19 treatments and how certain things like Plaquenil can affect the Black community. And I think you saw that video and was like, hey, let's get together and shoot some videos because I think you noticed in me that I have a passion for helping the underserved communities. I have
Mhm.
worked in underserved clinics before, and the information is just not there. When we look at disparities in the communities, especially between white communities versus all other colors, especially if you're coming from a poorer community
Mhm.
without that many resources, you don't get access to this type of care. I practice in a concierge style clinic. This is my second clinic like that. And I just noticed the amount of money that people are able to spend outside of their insurance is a real luxury. And that's why they get the type of health care that we're able to give because they're able
Mhm.
to afford it. So, what happens to those people who aren't able to afford good health care? And how do we close those gaps while
Mhm.
also protecting our own license? That was some things that I had questions about. How can I get information out there to the public without allowing them to form their thoughts and start Dr. Googling and running wild with the information and potentially cause risk there? So I've just been trying to put out a few videos and good information on my Dr. Shine Says page on Facebook just to reach out to people to keep their awareness high of these gaps. And I'm sure they know how marginalized they are. They don't need to be reminded. They already know. So the question becomes, how do we close those gaps? How do we keep people informed without really ruffling any feathers or risking our own livelihood? You know, this is
Yeah.
how we earn a profit. This is what we went to school for and invested so much money for, to have our, you know, liberties and families and practices. So I'm glad we decided to join forces and do this. Me, you know, I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee.
Hmm.
My family is African American, and my great grandparents were also Native American.
Hmm.
So I kind of grew up with that background already, spending so much time in the kitchen with my grandmother making medicine. The majority of the medications we took came from our backyard. So, you know, I spent a great deal of time with her formulating compounds that we would all take that kept us healthy. And so here I was wanting to be a flight surgeon and go back into the Air Force and do flight surgery, and found myself doing a 360 and ending up right back where I started as a child. Just being
Hmm.
able to blend that together and seeing the power of integrative medicine,
Oh yeah.
being able to work together with other doctors from a multitude of disciplines is how we really close that gap between people who are on all pharmaceuticals as well
Hmm.
versus just purely nature cure, meeting somewhere in the middle and developing a sound practice of medicine. And then taking that and being able to give that to the masses who need that information, who can't afford it as much as well. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a little of my insight, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, to kind of circle back on disparities, I know a lot of people say, well, it's because they have comorbid conditions, and it's because, now they can start eating better. But I mean, when you have had, less opportunities, you can expect that you're going to, buy what you can afford, and these comorbid conditions are going to be in the poor communities because of that. I mean, we were talking about the Tuskegee experiment, how the United States wanted to see the progression of syphilis. So what they did was they went into the Black community and they said, you know what, we will give you health care, good benefits. And at the time, they didn't have a cure for syphilis. They didn't have a treatment. So, I think it was late 60s, early 70s, they found that penicillin worked, but they said, you know what, we're going to withhold this from the Black community and just the progression. And as you can imagine, like, people died. And, there was a distrust of the, medical services provided. Like, are they going to test on us? I mean, a lot of medical ethics was born out of things that happen in Nuremberg and other places when you know, Jewish community were tested on, and then we had disabled communities and prison populations tested on. And, you would think that the Tuskegee experiment happened, way back when in the 1920s, but it's the 1970s. This is pretty recent.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's these things that most people don't think of or don't even know. So, I hope that by doing this, we can give people just some easy tips to take control of their lives, and, figure out, like, this is going to be a healthy, or how to eat healthy. Like, if you have to go to eat fast food because that's what you can afford, like, how do you pick and choose what you eat?
Mm-hmm.
So, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think we have so many things to unpack out of
Yeah.
everything you said, right? Because you're what, Filipino and Mexican, is that
Yep.
right? Okay,
Filipino, Mexican, Chinese, and indigenous Mexican peoples of Mexico.
right? So within each one of these groups, they've had their own troubles with government, with systems, with healthcare. And so I know for me as a Black woman coming from a predominantly Black community, I can definitely see where there's a lot of distrust for the healthcare system, distrust for the government, just like the Tuskegee Institute, Tuskegee experiment. There were never any, what I felt, sound repercussions for those accidents either. No one ever apologized or really held accountable for those actions.
Oh,
And so you're talking about,
yeah.
right now they're about to start running a COVID vaccine, and they want to start testing where? Right in Africa. So we've still been those test subjects when it comes to new diseases, new cures, medication. You can take this all the way back to genetic studies on Henrietta Lacks genes. They're finally coming out with a movie, well, they came out with it already, that discussed that. And I don't know if her family's getting any repercussions. So whenever there's some issues going on where we've seen complete distrust caused by people in our society who we should be able to trust, we should be able to trust our government. We pay taxes. We should be able to trust our doctors because we all took oaths. And the first thing in that oath is to do no harm. And if you know this thing is harmful, why would you do it to the public, right? So I know with my community of people, I've had several talks with people in the Italian communities, that just, they'd rather do anything than to go to the doctor. I've worked in, spent time in Belize where people would rather go see their, witch doctor or their shaman or whomever, their elders in the community, than to go to the community clinics and hospital. So those things are embedded. You're talking about people who were enslaved, and if they even got any medical care, it was just to keep them healthy enough to keep them working in the fields. It would not have been the same care that their owners would have gotten. And here we are, fast forward to 2020, you're still having Black women dying in something like childbirth. Women have been giving birth since the dawn of man. Why are we, with our advances in medicine and healthcare and hospital care and research, still be having women dying, not just any woman though, Black women, at these alarming rates? And even when we're talking about things like predispositions and, genetic predisposition, and what was that you said earlier? It was a buzzword that you used that I feel like we've been hearing a lot of, just susceptibility with comorbid diseases that are preventable, right? So when you talk about prevention, well, what's the step one? You have to know what to prevent. Knowledge is the first step. And if you're not delivering knowledge to these people, how can you expect anyone to make a sound, rational decision? So now that you have the knowledge, now what? Do you have healthy shops in your community where you can go ahead and pick fresh organic fruits and vegetables? I look at my own income versus how much I spend to live, right? And I'm a doctor, and I go to Whole Foods or Sprouts, and we've been eating predominantly organic for, I know, a solid decade or more now. So the majority of my income appears to go to healthy groceries for me and my daughter, just so I can make sure we don't have any conditions that could have been otherwise avoided. How many people can do that when it really boils down to a pack of oatmeal for my children, or, my lights being on, or me commuting to work on the bus still? So there's so many issues to unpack. Having the knowledge, being able to afford to do something about it, having a practitioner that you trust. And these are all the things that I think within these videos we need to explore, including subconscious prejudices that people have as practitioners that you don't even know you have. How many people did we go to medical school with? I mean, think about our class. I was one of 3 Black people?
Yeah. And
Something
the original, well, no, 4. Yeah.
There was 3 to 4 of us, and, a handful of Asian students. The rest was pretty much Caucasian, right? And the majority of those Caucasian students just in our population, How many of them were on financial aid or came from a poor demographic? Not very many. And
Mm,
they're going to be able to, you're raised and born around people who look like you. This is where representation matters. You're
mhm,
in an area serving people who look like you, think like you, act like you, have the same, access to care as you do. And you may not know how to properly communicate to a poor Black woman, a poor Mexican man, what
mhm,
the issues are, and really have a great fine-tuned listening ear for what they're saying. You have to have a certain level of sympathy and empathy to even identify in these cases. What about your own inherent prejudices that you haven't unpacked yet as a
mhm,
provider? Is that what's happening as well? That you have so many Caucasian doctors, it's still a very Caucasian dominated field, and it's still a very male dominated field when you're talking about doctors of any sort, right?
yep,
So to get a man to even listen to you when you hit that hormonal range and you're trying to describe hot flashes, if that man isn't fine tuned to that feminine aspect, being able to listen, will he
mhm,
really be able to help you? It's like, here, take this pill that should work, you'll be fine, and just send this woman out there without even rechecking their levels or things like that. And I don't mean to pack all men in one group, because we have some fantastic male doctors who do treat predominantly women. But in my mind, I'm like, hey, if you don't have a vagina, you don't get to tell me what my experience should or shouldn't be like with one, you know? So it's kind of that same idea. We have to have representation so we can speak the language that
mhm.
people in your own background will understand, you know? Out of all the people I've treated over the years, I think tops I've had 10 Black patients. I
Mhm.
oversee a clinic that has 2 locations, and yes, I work in both locations. And out of 400 patients, roughly, there are very few. I have a handful of Hispanic or Latino, Latinx community representatives, and I have even fewer Black. I honestly, if I could remember off the top of my head that I've personally seen,
Mhm.
I really believe currently I only have 4 Black patients, 1 Black male, 3 Black females. And when they walked in the door
Mhm.
and saw that their doctor and medical director was Black, it was like, and that trust automatically was there just
Mhm.
because we looked alike. Those things are important.
Yeah.
So we do have to think about our own inherent nature and what we think about each other. If you're a straight person, how do you really feel about treating gay people? If you're a Christian person, how do you really respond when a person is Muslim, Buddhist, Jewish, anything? And those religions factor into how they
Mhm.
behave, because they really believe in prayer and their God and how that works and how that would manifest in their lives as far as their health and healing goes.
Mhm.
So we have to factor all of that in. So yeah, I love to hear what you think a little bit more, about those things.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we'll be unpacking as we go along. I mean, it's really a lot to unpack. I mean, I try and reconcile like how does a doctor who is Christian care for someone who's transgender? Like,
Mhm,
if will you be unbiased? Like, I'm
mhm.
constantly checking myself to
Yes.
make sure that I recognize if I'm being biased or, providing the best level of care that I can, regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation. Um, I want to strive to be better and serve my community, just anyone who comes in the door. While I agree, like, our medicine is powerful, it really is, and it makes a difference. And, a lot of people come in with chronic conditions who have, you know, I have this symptom, I have this, I have high blood pressure, and, our medicine is so powerful that when you start doing diet and lifestyle changes, it impacts everything,
Mhm,
everything. But the
mhm,
problem is that, one, we're not really covered by insurance depending on the state you're in.
mhm,
So it's not accessible like you were talking about. I completely agree that not anyone can just for this kind of medicine. It's highly unfortunate because for the people who need it the most,
Mhm.
it's hard for them to access because, you know, as far as I know, in states like mine, there's no type of voucher system that they give saying that, you know, you can have this care provided by a naturopathic doctor or integrative. And, you know, I'm still fairly new, so I have less than 100 patients.
Mhm.
And, you know, trying to, you know, balance keeping the doors open and serving my community to the best that I can. So I'm really proud that we're discussing these issues and that we will tackle some, you know, foundational things that you can do. Um, and, you know, if you need personalized service, you're more than welcome to visit us, you know, and just let us know your situation and maybe we can help out some
Some.
way.
Mhm.
I am really glad that we're doing this
Yeah,
and
I am too. And it feels good. It's great to combine forces with someone that I definitely respect. I've always respected your work ethic, your level of intelligence, you know, how kind and compassionate you are, you know, and you're a person that just gets things done, you know, you're a great woman, a great mother, you know. So it's good to be able to connect with people that you
yeah,
jive with, as we say, right? And when it comes to patient care, and you're talking about, you know, it should always start with ourselves.
yeah.
And I hope that other providers will watch these videos and really think, okay, am I checking myself? You know, when I think about what's going on right now and people ask me how I stay balanced, I mean, to be truth be told, I feel like I'm getting older. I'm very busy. And then I come home and I'm a single mom. I'm grouchy as hell. Most of the time,
Yeah.
I'm getting old and I'm getting grouchy, and my tolerance for BS has gone down to the basic thread of a line. I can't do it, you know. But honestly, what I do for myself would be the same things that I share with my patients to do for themselves. One, I don't like being a hypocrite. So I try to eat well. And I think about the foundations of health and what's important to me. If you learn nothing else or don't continue down these series of videos, we just think about these basics. One, if you sleep well. This is something that we know. We're in a world now where there's much more insomnia than you've ever seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And number one, if you're going to bed with your electronics and you're constantly checking IG, tweet, TikTok, Facebook, you know, all of these other things, you're not sleeping.
Oh
And
yeah.
the less you sleep, the more susceptible you are to diseases to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
While you're resting, that's your time for your body to heal, restore, refresh, rejuvenate. You
Oh
need to
yeah.
sleep. And basic things like drinking water. I have so many patients that do not like to drink water. And I can see it on your labs. I can tell the minute I look at how you're
Oh yeah.
functioning, you know, your BUN levels. And when I look at how thick and viscous the blood is, it looks like molasses, red colored molasses coming out into the tube. And I'm like, gee whiz, what is it? Do you wake up with coffee and go to bed with Coca-Cola and just nothing but that in between?
Oh,
And
I
we
know.
see those things.
Yeah.
And when you try to tell someone, all right, let's start with the basics. Let's sleep, let's drink water. Please choose to eat well. We all suffer with that. Look how many
Mm-hmm.
people are gaining weight during this quarantine. You know, you see more people outside exercising because the gyms are closed. And you really should be getting that movement in for your mental health,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
food and exercise are going to have to go together. People are eating too much and not working out enough, right?
Yep.
So what happens when your body starts to turn against you is when you start to ignore the basic foundations of self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember Dr. Lisa Portera Perry, who I always thought
Mm-hmm.
was just an incredible human being. I always quote her when she said, nothing you put in your body does nothing. Everything you put in your body is going to do something, and it's going to do one or two things. It's going to harm or it's going to heal. So when
Mm-hmm.
people ask me, well, I ate one Oreo, it's not going to hurt anything. No, that one Oreo won't kill you. It most certainly won't. but it's nothing of nutritional value in there. So if you are sensitive to anything that's in that cookie, imagine every time you eat that cookie or anything
Mhm.
like that cookie on a day-to-day basis will start to warp your body, warp your genes, and all of the signals that it sends out, which are your best friends, symptoms are your best friends.
Mhm.
They're letting you know that your body is trying to talk to you to get you to stop, slow down, eat some
Mhm.
broccoli instead of
Yeah.
eating pizza, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when we think about food choices, how do we arm our patients with information that we speak their language so that they can
Oh yeah.
understand what their choices are and how they are choosing their choice? So you're not a victim of your own life. You're the
Yep.
master of your own life. So
Yep.
if you think about that power, you have the power to choose. Even when you decide to do nothing,
Mhm.
you decided that. So I try to empower my patients to understand when you know something, do something about it. Choose to
Mhm.
be better. All right. So you have a community. That's the next step. Do you have people you can go to, you can talk to, you can
Mhm.
form an exercise group with, work out together, just like you go socialize and eat and drink together?
Yep.
Get that exercise in. And consistency is the key when it comes to all of these things. Motivation really means not a damn thing. We all, motivation wax and wanes, right?
Mhm.
But when it comes to something like consistency, you're either consistent or you're not. You
Yep.
miss Monday, guess what? You have an opportunity for Monday night or Tuesday morning.
Mhm.
Do something about it. And so when I go to bed, I try to sleep peacefully. I set my meditation table. I'm actually kind of working from home periodically and still in the office as well. But I have my meditation table there. Every time I sit on this couch, I see my meditation table. Every time I roll out of bed, I see my meditation table in my room. And that reminds me to ground myself.
Yeah, and I see those singing bowls behind you, and
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking like maybe for our next discussion we can talk about stress and singing
My, my.
bowls. Yep.
Yes, that would be a good one. And, I love to cover that. I do
Yes.
hand out meditation packets to my patients. Everything that are in those packets are things that I've personally practiced or put
Okay.
into regular practice. So I enjoy them. I think it's simple, and it's just as simple as you trying it. And I tell people, think of your meditation mental health breaks throughout the day as a smoke break, right?
Yeah.
People are allowed to go outside and smoke, 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 smoke. Not a healthy choice, but they were allowed to do that. And they exercise that right.
I have a
Exercise your right
funny,
to have a mind body break, you
uh-huh.
know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I kind of have a funny story. I don't know if it's funny or the power of meditation. I was having problems sleeping, and when my son was first born, I think he was maybe, I don't know, 6 months. No, maybe 8 months. He was 8 months. And I was having problems sleeping, so I put on this guided meditation for deep sleep. It worked
Mhm.
so well that I fell asleep while my son was sleeping, and he rolled over me and off the bed, and he fractured his collarbone. Philip got up, my husband got up, and he's like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And I'm like, what
I was
happened? So, I mean, now I've learned be very cautious. God, kids are resilient, and I felt horrible, but it just goes to show the power of meditation. Like, I didn't really think. I mean, I know meditation worked at the time, like just for stress relaxation, but I was like, really, I'm not even tired. Deep sleep, yeah, right, and I was out.
out. Oh, yeah. It is something, and I do try to offer people that little bit. If nothing else, play, something on YouTube. Listen to it first. So that way you can know if they're saying anything during the guided meditation that doesn't resonate with you, so it won't snap you out of your sleep. Or if you hear a sound or a ringing in there that may interrupt your sleep, go
Mm-hmm.
ahead and try to listen to it while you're awake just to make sure. So you're thinking about when you're awake and active and you need your brain to be sharp, you can
Mm-hmm.
always play something with alpha waves, right? That's the brain pattern, those quick,
Yep.
rapid wavelengths that we're on, like right now as we're up and
Mm-hmm.
talking. But then when you think about going to sleep, what happens? Those alpha waves are way up here riding it out, and then they just drop down, and the delta waves are these low, beautiful sine waves of
Mm-hmm.
curves. That's where your brain should be.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about that hertz, that frequency, those brain waves and vibrations, find something that really will send you into that grounding, that, relaxation, that
Yeah.
tranquility. That way, when you do fall asleep, it's a very sound, peaceful sleep to begin
Mm-hmm.
with. And even if you don't go to sleep right away, just lay there with your eyes closed and let it continue to play. I played an 11-hour om because now I'm working on becoming a super meditator. I've
Mm-hmm.
definitely been meditating. I started, and maybe this will be conversation for another time. We'll talk about our experience with meditation.
Okay.
But I started out in 1999, and it was the craziest thing how my brain kept singing Madonna Holiday. Every time I close my eyes, I'm like, I'm there, I'm breathing, I got this holiday. And I find myself wanting to celebrate. I love Madonna, but cut it out. And I could have given up at that moment because everyone ever met me, and you will know this, I have zero patience. It's really hard for me. And you would think I would have walked out on meditation right then. But something deep inside of me, my spirit, my soul, my energy, whatever you want to call it, would not let that happen. So I tell people, stick with it. Because
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen after a while, the minute you just wave your hand over your body and you feel just the heat and energy from the palm of your hand, your body will follow that sensation. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a silent body scan
Oh yeah.
and just deposit itself. And I used to do that in between patients. I walk out of one room, take a few breaths, balance myself back out. Good
Mm-hmm.
morning, Mr. So-and-so. How's everything going? And go right to the next person. And doctors have to remember how important self-care is because we
Yes.
know a lot, we teach a lot, we preach a lot, we enforce a lot, and we won't do any of it. This is why I used to work with doctors who were pulmonologists who smoked like trains. I've never seen that much smoke. And one of them got in trouble for, you know, smoking in the bathroom, this guy. The same person was telling everyone to stop smoking. So, you know what I mean? But the difference is we pay for our education, we pay to have this much knowledge. And
Mm-hmm.
so, how much of it do we give away? Because this is our intellectual property, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do feel a certain level of obligation when you know and you can see the trajectory of people headed on a certain path of destruction.
Mm-hmm.
For me, not only as a doctor, but as a human being, as an empathic person, I want to make sure that I catch you before you fall and arm you with good information.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times we're out in public and we're diagnosing people whether we want to or not, you know? How many
Yeah.
times do you be like, oh, girl, you need some rest hacks? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I'm glad we get to have this discussion. It's so great working with you. And I'm glad we're going to get to,
Yeah.
pretty much exchange patients. I hope I get to come out there in North Carolina
Oh
and
yeah.
work out some things with you and help you even grow and expand your practice, which would be great. Getting more
Yeah.
women out there and from different groups. One thing I want to touch on, even though we're targeting people of color, people in
Mm-hmm.
underserved communities. What I definitely want to say that I've noticed that didn't sit right with me
Mm-hmm.
is the treatment that wealthy white people get, right? Prime example, I had a patient, she was a doctor, she was a naturopathic medical doctor like we are.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up quitting her practice. She married an extremely wealthy man. And I mean extreme, the money will never run out. And I remember people having something to say about it. Now, I've seen this time and time again. Like, oh, You know, the people who've had to work so hard from the ground up, and I'm one of those people, came from basically nothing, had to work my way really up the ranks, you know, where you can form opinions about people based off what they have, right? So poor people of color are not the only people who get mistreated.
Mm-hmm.
We also, from these demographics, have to be careful with how we deal with rich white people who we feel have the most, right?
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
heard people say over and over, oh, poor, sad millionaire or billionaire. Hey, having money doesn't remove you from the human experience
Mm-hmm.
in totality.
Yes.
You still lose family members, you lose children, you
Mm-hmm.
lose your health. You
Yep.
know, with that level of money, you should be able to pay to get it back. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But it doesn't, having money doesn't absolve you
Oh
from
yeah.
loss. It doesn't absolve you from depression
Mm-hmm.
or grief. You're not exempt from the human experience and condition. Your
Yeah.
conditions just may be different from somebody else. And it's all a matter of perception. And I
Yeah.
don't know how many, like my demographic of people, they're extremely wealthy. Even now, I have a lot of very, very rich patients. And I listen to them day in and day out. Majority of them are Caucasian because about 95% of my people are. And it always has been that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to listen to being raped by your father. You know, I have to listen to people who have been kidnapped, you know, people who have been in domestic situations, you know, people who've lost their children, which is a horrible experience. I had one patient, she was doing great, finally got her to where she was stable, and both of her daughters on their way back to school was killed, hit by a truck,
Oh
killed
no.
in the car. Her only two babies gone. So I don't care how wealthy that person is. When you're crying to me about something like that, and I'm a mom to a daughter, I can't imagine that level of pain and loss.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I lost that patient as a patient, but I still continue to at least email her. Is everything okay? I just really want to check on you and make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
Heart still goes out to her because that will be a lifelong story of hers. It's
Yeah.
woven into the fabric of who she is. And her having money in a case
Mm-hmm.
like that is irrelevant. So
Mm-hmm.
for those of us who are probably perceiving ourselves as the low men or women on the totem pole, we still have to look at our own inherent issues and still see these people as human beings because they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I'm glad you highlighted that. That we picked this topic because, um, it's not to diminish what everyone is going through. It's not to say that, you know, only Caucasian wealthy people, we're not going to talk to you. It's not about that. It's just we're picking topics that, might highlight just some things going on in, different communities other than Caucasian or other than wealthy or,
mhm.
but we're not in any means saying that, this is only for, people of color. It's just highlighting the issues of people of color.
Yes.
Um, so I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, well, I sure appreciate this. I know these videos are meant to be about what, approximately 40 minutes or something like that.
Yep.
So, let's definitely plan our next topic. And once we post this to our viewers, if anybody's seeing this and have things that you want to mention or that you want brought up that you have questions about or certain topics that you want us to cover, we'll go over that because I treat so many hormone cases and insomnia cases, autoimmune. I would like a lot of these talks to be geared towards conditions we're actually
Mhm.
treating and how that impacts certain demographics even more. Because you surely are going to have insomnia if you're living in a gang infested neighborhood and you're hearing gunshots going off all the time, right?
Yes.
That's a different level of insomnia because you're also worried about basic existence and survivability. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do want us to tackle all of those things. And everyone may not like what we have to say, but I'm an envelope pusher. It's what I do.
Yeah, and I mean,
That's
people
the
can
part.
comment and educate us to their point of view. I'm open to different thoughts, feelings, ideas, anything we might have missed or didn't bring up.
Sure.
But one request I have, is maybe on our next video we hear them singing bowls.
Yeah, I see you mentioning
Yeah.
them. I have a number of them back there, and maybe I'll play this. This is one of my favorite. It's actually made out of quartz crystal. It's an E, excuse me, that one's a C harmony. And the one sitting up top with the hammer in there, that one is, I don't like to play favorites, but it's my favorite, and it knows. I play that thing a lot. So I did do and I did this for my staff. We'll probably talk about those things too. Like, how do you manage your staff and open up staff meetings? Last week, instead of having a staff meeting, we had a comfort circle. So I got all the
Okay.
staff to come in at lunchtime, and we sat around in a circle. I brought several bowls. I played them all. And we went through a body scanning from head to toe so that they can learn how to do that and how to check in with their own body, and making
Okay.
sure that they know, just as a medical director, yeah, my focus is on clinic operations and how the patients are doing, but I care a lot about each individual person that works
Mm-hmm.
with me, and it
Yep.
is team, making sure they feel appreciated and they're just as armed with information, and that my door is open. You can come in anytime if you are feeling stressed right now. We have people
Mm-hmm.
who have family members with COVID, so my
Yeah.
goal is to make sure that they feel comforted while they're working. I have a lot of single mothers and just moms as a whole with
Mm-hmm.
family and husbands working all day in the clinic still while their families are at home and
Yeah.
doing at home school online homework, which is the bane of my existence right now. But we all have to remember to support each other. So,
Yes.
um, making sure that as practitioners, we're not only taking care of ourselves and our patient population, but our
Mm-hmm.
staff. So, but thank
Okay.
you so much for this. I really appreciate it. It's,
All right. Well,
yeah.
stay safe and have a good
Yes,
night.
ma'am. You too.
Uh,
Thanks.
all
Bye.
right. Bye.